Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Fake warships. Is there a war coming between the United States and China? Satellite images have discovered something shocking in a Chinese desert. In the middle of absolutely nowhere, with nothing else to be seen for miles except empty dust, satellite images revealed a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier and a destroyer. But these aren't real vessels built by the U.S. They appear to be fakes constructed by China, though nobody knows exactly what they're for. The best guess experts have is that the fake warships are being used in military exercises. China could be practicing attacking fake U.S. vessels in preparation for a future fight. You may have seen in the news that China has been seriously upgrading its military recently. There's been a lot of concern over tension in the South China Sea between China, the U.S., and Taiwan. The images captured of the Chinese desert were taken by Maxar Technologies, a company based in Colorado. The images show the outline of a U.S. aircraft carrier and a destroyer placed on a railway track. The exact location isn't clear, but it's somewhere in the Taklamakan Desert. Could these images hint at an imminent war between the U.S. and China? Is China really testing how to destroy U.S. ships at a remote target range in the desert? It's not impossible. Recently, the Pentagon issued a worrying report saying that China is expanding its nuclear capabilities faster than they anticipated. So, in the near future, Beijing could match the US in terms of nuclear power, which is absolutely terrifying. And then it's time for a shout-out. I want to give a huge thank you to Toddzilla Simon for the generous super thanks. Thank you so much for continuing to support the channel. We wouldn't be here without you. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. Something spooky in the lake. Something scary was discovered on Google Maps. Satellite images showed a car sitting at the bottom of a pond, and miraculously, the shocking discovery solved a case that had gone cold since 2006. On October 11, 2006, 72-year-old Davy Les Niles left Jake's Bar in Byron Township and was never seen again. His family told police that Davy had met a friend at the bar but left abruptly because of some discomfort. Davy was suffering from cancer at the time and needed to get home quickly. But after he left, he got lost somewhere between the bar and his home. Then in 2011, the family gave up all hope of ever finding Davy again. So they published his obituary. Years later, a man named Brian Houseman was decorating a tree for Christmas outside the local funeral home. As he decorated the top of the tree, he noticed a car submerged in the pond behind the building. What makes things even sadder is that the car's shape was already visible on Google Maps and had been for years. The discovery then led to the car being pulled out of the pond, and sure enough, Davy's body was found behind the driver's seat. It appears that whatever discomfort was bothering Davy caused him to veer off the road and plunge into the pond, ultimately ending his life. Russian mercenary graves. In April 2023, 200 freshly dug graves were discovered at a cemetery in the Russian city of Novosibirsk. Locals were shocked because they hadn't heard anything about the new section of graveyard being rapidly filled with bodies. When eyewitnesses checked out the graveyard, they found that the graves were decorated with wreaths that bore the symbols of the notorious mercenary organization known as the Wagner Group. The symbols I'm referring to are the yellow star and the black cross. There were scores of graves here, with all the dates saying they died between November 2022 and January 2023. It appeared as though the graves belonged to mercenaries who were fighting in the Ukraine war. Looking at satellite images taken before 2023, you can see the entire section of the cemetery was unused. This is a secret cemetery plot used to bury mercenaries who were buried without their relatives being informed. Reports coming out of Russia said many of the graves even belonged to known convicts. Since the start of the war, the Wagner Group has allegedly recruited around 40,000 convicts from Russia's penitentiary system. Rumor has it that they receive a pardon if they survive 6 months on the battlefield in Ukraine. An estimated 50,000 fighters with the mercenary organization have already been lost in the war, and 200 of them are buried in this new graveyard. It makes you wonder, where are the rest of the bodies? China's secret prisons. In 2018, rumor began to spread about the alleged atrocities that were being conducted in China against Muslim minorities and indigenous Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region. There were believed to be about 1,200 camps spread across the far western region of China that were used to detain and brainwash Muslims. When researchers started to investigate, they looked at satellite images using the Chinese mapping platform Baidu Maps. Western researchers were a little puzzled because certain areas were camouflaged by blank tiles. The mapping platform appeared to be purposely hiding secret camps across China by replacing them with blank map tiles. Researchers then compared the manipulated Chinese maps with satellite images from Google Earth and the European Space Agency. They identified a total of 5 million masked tiles across Xinjiang. The Chinese were covering up military bases, prisons, mines, industrial facilities, power plants, and training grounds. China was able to manipulate their own mapping platform, but not satellite images from other nations. And soon enough, the true scope of the secret prisons was revealed. Satellite data analyzed by RAND and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency showed terrifying complexes fenced by barbed wire. Australian researchers mapped 380 suspected detention facilities. And as they kept watch on the satellite data, they saw the facilities growing throughout 2020. But then something strange happened. The satellite images showed that the facilities started to shrink after 2020. Nobody knows what's going on in Xinjiang, only that China has hundreds of secret prisons where they are allegedly systematically removing Muslims from their country. Ancient desert settlements. Scientists aboard the International Space Station made a shocking discovery in an unexpected place. The ISS released satellite images that were taken of the desert in Kazakhstan, and in the images you can see the remains of ancient settlements that were built an estimated 8,000 years ago. It's not every day that astronauts make archaeological discoveries from space. The amazing ruins were found in the steppes of Kazakhstan. There are hundreds of mounds here, which likely represent destroyed villages and towns of prehistoric nomads. The largest of the mounds is an enormous square with sides measuring about 900 feet long. Whatever the structure once was, its proportions are bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Archaeologists are calling it the Ushtogaysky Square, though nobody knows what it may have been. It could have been a village, or maybe it was nothing more than a stone monument. It's been so many years that all that remains is a large mound of dirt. In total, satellite images revealed around 260 earthworks, and surprisingly, one of them is in the form of a swastika. It appears to have been made from wood, a massive monument that was shaped like a swastika. Long before Adolf Hitler hijacked the symbol, it was used as a depiction of power and prosperity among nomadic tribes in Central Asia. Archaeologists believe that the earthworks were created by a group known as the Madagascar culture. They predated the much more famous Scythian warriors, who dominated the same area thousands of years later. The Madagascar culture existed between 7,000 and 5,000 BC. Very little is known about them, but they were obviously an extremely impressive culture. Archaeologists still need to investigate all the ruins to understand the scope of this ancient civilization. The New World. Biologist Julian Bayliss discovered an entire new rainforest that had never been studied before using Google Earth. Julian discovered the ecosystem thanks to some satellite images of Mozambique. He spotted Mount Lico, a mound of rock and forest that rises 2,100 feet above the surrounding landscape. And he noticed a patch of dark green forest at the top of the mound and realized that no scientist had ever been there before. It took 5 years after he made the discovery in 2012 to put together a team. Then, in 2017, Julian and a group of scientists flew to Mozambique and journeyed to Mount Lico. As far as they were aware, not a single human being had ever climbed to the top of the mountain. The mountain is unique in that there is no easy way to reach its summit without climbing up a sheer rock face for hundreds of feet. It's nearly impossible, but Julian was determined to get to the top. The doctor and his colleagues initially had to explore the forested crater at the mountain's peak using a drone. The top of the mountain is shaped like a massive bowl, with a secret forest hidden within. The drone was piloted down into the crater where it transmitted the first images of a real lost world. Eventually, though, the team did make the arduous journey up the side of the mountain and into the crater. Since then, they have found new species that were unknown to science. For example, a new type of amphibian, a new freshwater crab, and a new chameleon. An amazing ruin. A positively massive ruin has been discovered hiding in plain sight thanks to satellite images. The ruin is located in one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. It's about the size of an Olympic swimming pool, just south of Petra city center in Jordan. Archaeologists have been studying the lost city of Petra for nearly 200 years and have never noticed the ruins because they are invisible from the ground. Millions of tourists have poured through the ruins of Petra, and none of them ever realized they were walking over a massive structure. The newly found ruin is obviously quite easy to miss from ground level, and that's because it's not a ruin in the typical sense. There are no broken stone columns or foundation walls sticking out of the ground. The ruin is nothing more than a square lump of dirt. It was only found thanks to a woman named Sarah Parkak, a space archaeologist. In the past, she's used satellite images to track looted burial sites and identify lost pyramids in Egypt. So, when she came across the suspicious square shape in Petra, she passed the information along to one of her colleagues working in the city named Christopher Tuttle. Christopher was able to physically investigate the site. He did some digging and found the ruins of foundations and column bases hidden underground. However, it's still unknown what the structure was in ancient times. It consists of a platform that once held rows of sandstone columns. Sarah says the structure has no parallels to anything else in the ancient city. It's positively massive and must have been a rather important place. It could have been a plaza for public rituals, nobody really knows. It must have been built during the 2nd century BC by the Nabateans. Then it was likely destroyed by the Romans 2 or 3 centuries later. The secret naval base. In the Southeast Asian country of Cambodia, Sihanoukville was known as the backpacker party town for years. It was the place where tourists came to pound beers and lounge in the jungle. But in recent years, the city has started to change. One of the biggest changes has been the mysterious naval base allegedly being developed by China. According to a report from the Wall Street Journal in 2019, Cambodia signed a secret deal with China to allow them to use part of the naval base in Sihanoukville. It's called the Ream Naval Base, and Cambodia has denied that China has anything to do with it. However, if the recent satellite photos are to be believed, China is making enormous changes to the whole area. Satellite images obtained from Planet Labs show a dramatic difference in the landscape between now and just 4 years ago. Massive sections of the jungle have been completely cleared, and the naval base has grown significantly compared to satellite images from July 2022. There are new structures, and there's even something that looks like a new cement plant. There are also 2 new piers, one of which looks like it will be used to ferry in construction material. The bottom line is that China seems to be funding the development of what is soon to be an enormous naval base in the Gulf of Thailand. It's important because, if true, China has a strategic naval staging facility in Southeast Asia. This could allow China to dramatically expand control over the South China Sea, leading to further tensions with the U.S. Hiding UFOs. Hacker Gary McKinnon is the man who's been in a legal battle for the past decade for hacking NASA's computers. He recently claimed that alien ships are being secretly airbrushed out of satellite images revealed to the public by NASA. According to Gary's claims, he got a lot of his information from former NASA whistleblower Donna Hare. Top members of NASA make sure any publicly available satellite images are first doctored to get rid of any rogue UFOs. If Gary is to be believed, satellite images should show UFOs hovering in the sky. There should be mysterious disks and strange orbs all over the world, but NASA is covering it up. Gary says that there's a whole lab dedicated to airbrushing UFOs from satellite images to keep the public from learning about aliens. Secret U.S. Army bases. In November 2017, the app Strava published a map showing 3 trillion individual GPS data points. These data points were recorded by people using the Strava app to track their fitness. Strava is used by a lot of people through their fitness devices like the Fitbit to track their running routes and exercise patterns. When Strava released the map showing all the data collected through their app, they accidentally revealed the locations of secret US Army bases. But how in the world did this happen? It's all because of a small subset of military personnel using Strava during active service. In most cases, the data points show people jogging through cities or working out at gyms. These data points light up on the map all across the world in ordinary places. But when looking at the map, there are some extremely unusual places highlighted in countries like Afghanistan, Syria, and Djibouti. These highlighted areas are the result of soldiers logging their fitness data through Strava, accidentally giving away the locations of secret bases. If you look at the brightly lit areas in Afghanistan where people have been using Strava, then compare the areas using Google Maps or Apple Maps, that's where you get a problem. On Google Maps, there is no base or sign of human activity, but on the Strava map, you can clearly see people logging fitness data in the middle of nowhere. All these US bases were revealed to the world thanks to unwitting soldiers tracking their daily running routines using devices like their Fitbit. Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. The Lost City of Tannis. The city of Tannis, which you may know from Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, was once the capital city of ancient Egypt, but has long been lost to the sands of the desert. That was until archaeologists analyzed infrared satellite images of the region thanks to NASA and discovered the ancient lost city of Tannis. The scans showed the city to be 4 times bigger than had previously been thought and show a network of roads and houses that are completely invisible from ground level. This is possible because the buildings of ancient Egypt were made from dense mud brick, which leaves a clear outline when looked at in the right way from high up, but completely impossible to recognize when you're just standing there. This is the case with many discoveries made in dry areas, as I'll tell you about in a bit. Not only is there extensive evidence of houses and buildings, but also a large network of underground tombs. There are now ongoing excavations to uncover the 1,000 tombs and 3,000 ancient settlements. But with so much discovered at one time, it will most likely take many years for archaeologists to fully explore the site. It also proves that there's far more to be found across Egypt and other countries where ancient civilizations once stood. Who knows what secrets there are still waiting to be uncovered. Ancient sites in Afghanistan. Archaeologists rarely conduct excavations in Afghanistan due to the country's tumultuous political situation. But in late 2017, a team of US and Afghan researchers found another way to investigate ruins from a bird's eye view by analyzing commercial satellite data, American spy satellites, and drone images. In a project called the Afghan Heritage Mapping Partnership, they located thousands of unidentified ancient sites throughout the country where vanished empires once served as vital links between the East and West. Thanks to satellite and drone technology that is typically used for military purposes, over 4,500 features from the remote, largely unexplored ruins have been cataloged. Included among them are complex canal networks and dozens of large complexes called caravanserais, which were built for housing travelers between the early centuries BC and the 19th century. Made out of mud brick, the buildings housed hundreds of people and thousands of camels at any given time. The caravanserais were situated roughly a day's journey by caravan, around 12.5 miles apart from one another, along routes that linked the powerful Safavid and Mughal empires. The Safavid Empire was one of the greatest Iranian empires that ruled from 1501 to 1736. It was one of the first gunpowder empires that successfully used weapons with gunpowder, like cannons, during warfare. They were also famous for their architecture and philosophy. These trade routes, along with the enormous structures, connected travelers with the Mughal Empire all the way in India. The Mughal or Mughal dynasty ruled most of northern India from the 16th to the 18th centuries, and is also famous for having talented rulers that promoted arts and culture along with a centralized government. Recording and studying these historical historically valuable and highly threatened sites are the first steps to protecting them, according to archaeologist David Thomas, who has experience with remote sensing work in Afghanistan and expects tens of thousands of sites to be detected. Cold War spy photos. In 1996, the Clinton administration declassified Cold War-era images taken by Corona, popular name this year, right? But this was the first ever image reconnaissance satellite, which was developed during the 1950s by Air Force, CIA, and private industry experts as a way to capture images of the Soviet Union in hopes of identifying nuclear missile production facilities and launch sites. For decades, civilians were kept in the dark about the classified project, which aimed more generally to document parts of Eastern Europe and Asia with the help of its sister programs, Argon and Lanyard, which also focused on satellite imagery. The 800,000 photos that were taken were made public via Executive Order 12951, constituting one of the largest declassification projects in American history. Subsequent legislation known as the Kiel-Bingaman Amendment banned the release of satellite images of Israel and Palestine, arguing that doing so could potentially put Israel at risk of attack. The law created a literal void for archaeologists, who were left with nothing but a blank space to work with when it came to overhead images of the region, one of the richest archaeological areas on Earth. UK-based landscape archaeologist Michael Fradley found a clause in the Kiel-Bingaman Amendment stating that the US would release its satellite images of the region if commercially available, high-definition images became available from a foreign company, which was certainly the case. As a result, the U.S. Commercial Remote Sensing Regulatory Affairs Office announced this year that it would improve the quality of its publicly available images of Israel and Palestine that were captured by the Corona satellite. While modern archaeologists tend to rely on drone imagery of a site whenever possible, the Cold War spy photos come in handy sometimes. Due to the ongoing political strife in the region, it's not always possible for researchers to physically visit sites, and it's oftentimes inconvenient to fly a drone over there. While it's unclear what they hope to discover through the images, experts are counting on finding valuable ruins by studying pictures of restricted and difficult-to-access areas within the territories. PreColombian earthwork. A recent drone survey over a Kansas field revealed the presence of a wide, eroded ditch on a bluff overlooking the Walnut River. The structure, which was filled in with topsoil and grass and concealed by 400 years of exposure to the elements, once encircled a 21,000 square foot area. It's practically invisible to the naked eye, but is detectable via thermal imaging and represents one of several long-abandoned archaeological sites in the area, where the ancestors of the Wichita people once lived. Their cluster of villages occupied a 5-mile stretch along the Walnut River between the years 900 and 1650, where they grew beans, corn, squash, and sunflowers, hunted bison, and lived in grass-roofed huts. The purpose of their wide circular ditches remains unknown, but researchers speculate that they were ceremonial in nature. For centuries after their abandonment, these sites fell further and further out of the collective memory, as they were concealed by farms and pastures. Researchers believe they may represent Etzanoa, a great settlement that was first recorded by the controversial conquistador Juan de Oñate in 1601. It might be the remains of a council circle, similar to others found in the same area, but this means that there are probably many more archaeological features that we just haven't found yet. We just have to look harder, and drones are making it much easier for archaeologists to go exploring. 8,000-year-old lost civilizations. Archaeologists working in northeastern Syria recently detected 14,000 settlement sites thanks to digital maps of the Earth's surface and digital elevation data collected by NASA's Shuttle Radar Topography mission, and Cold War-era spy satellite images and remote sensing techniques. Technology and archaeology are now going hand in hand. Turns out that there are many places hidden in the landscape's overgrowth. In the process of finding the ruins, the team established a new technique for mapping large-scale patterns of human movement. They analyzed an area spanning 8,880 square miles and were able to map archaeological sites dating back 8,000 years. The findings have the potential to teach archaeologists about little-studied ancient civilizations that once lived in the region. While these more far-flung sites tend to receive less attention from researchers than palaces, cities, and other grand structures, they are important because they likely represent the places many people lived before ultimately migrating to more populated areas. Harvard archaeologist Jason says that traditional archaeology goes straight to the biggest features, the palaces or cities, but we tend to ignore the settlements at the other end of the social spectrum.
Basically, the common folk had to live somewhere and then slowly move to the larger cities. So the question is, where did they live before that? To detect these former places of human occupation, the team looked at something called anthrosols, which are formed from mud brick architecture and organic waste, basically soil left behind by human activity. Anthrosols exhibit differences from undisturbed soil, including having a finer texture, higher organic content, and a lighter appearance. One game-changing discovery made during the study is the presence of unusually large settlements that are not near any major modern freshwater sources or in areas with high precipitation. This points toward the likelihood that the societies developed irrigation techniques, possibly after settling and having nearby waters and moisture dry up. Dr. mentioned that you could search the land with Google Earth, but this method takes out the guesswork because you can see different colors bounce off of archaeological sites. Pretty cool, huh? Arabian Stone monuments. Saudi Arabia is not an easy place to get to for archaeologists, but luckily, scientists are able to collaborate and have the advantage of satellite imagery. One of the most mysterious archaeological enigmas are the millions of stone structures found in Western Arabia, making up different kinds of shapes. Called mustatils, they were first observed via satellite and are some of the biggest and oldest large-scale structures in the world. Researchers from the Max Planck Society collaborated with other experts from the Saudi Ministry of Tourism and several others to study the huge monuments, which are piled into rectangles. Researchers believe they are extremely old, perhaps even dating back to the Neolithic period, and many of them have been covered with newer structures. The team's findings, which were published in the Holocene, offer new clues about what life was like for early people who lived in the semi-arid region. Throughout the course of the study, the team identified hundreds of previously unrecorded mustatils, including over 100 that are situated between the cities of Ha'il and Taima in the Nefud Desert. Sometimes measuring over 1,970 feet long, the enigmatic structures consist of two large platforms connected by long but very low parallel walls. Oddly, very few other archaeological artifacts were found near the mustatils, some of which were radiocarbon dated to 7,000 years ago. Some of the only items found in and around them include ancient animal bones and a rock with a geometric pattern painted on it. The researchers concluded that the mustatils, which predate the Egyptian pyramids by around 2,000 years, were likely used for ritualistic purposes and social bonding, perhaps serving as sites for animal sacrifices or feasts. These piles of rock could also have been used for burial tombs and hunting traps. Madagascar's early settlements. Earlier this year, an international team of researchers found evidence of Madagascar's earliest human inhabitants by scouring through satellite imagery and other remote sensing data. One of the most surprising finds suggests that human populations benefited the land by migrating from the resource-rich areas they started out in to less suitable environments. We have a baseline assumption that people start in the most preferable areas with access to the best resources, and as that degrades and populations expand, they'll move to less suitable areas, said Christina Douglas, an assistant anthropology professor at Penn State University. She says that they found some evidence that there was a high concentration of people in the medium areas, not too perfect and rich, and not too poor. Ecologists and anthropologists refer to this as an alley effect. An alley effect is when people use agricultural and land modification techniques to improve their environment, essentially creating landscapes while not necessarily destroying them. She also cited the possible alley effect observed in Madagascar as evidence of close kinship ties and social networks, indicating that when a place became overcrowded, large groups relocated elsewhere together. While this might sound abstract, it is a good way for us to learn about early humans and what their life was like. Madagascar is a perfect example of just how far the benefits of studying satellite imagery can go, because its rugged environment makes on-site exploration difficult and expensive. The information gleaned by using these research techniques may also help answer questions about the island nation's past, including when humans first arrived there, and both how and why many of the large animals there went extinct over the last 1,000 years. The Great Wall's Northern Line. Archaeologists recently mapped a section of the Great Wall of China called the Northern Line, or Genghis Khan's Wall, using drones and high-resolution satellite images. The 460-mile-long wall runs across the Mongolian Tibetan steppe in Mongolia and parts of Russia and China, and was built between the 11th and 13th centuries. The study says that the Northern Line was built to prevent nomadic raids and to monitor and control the movements of nomadic peoples and their herds. One of the region's imperial dynasties, the Khitan Liao Empire, apparently sought to expand its influence over nomads living in the area through the use of the wall. These findings, which were published in the journal Antiquity, suggest that experts need to rethink the long-held theory that this and similar walls were built for military defense. We need to study their structure and context to better understand the reasons they were built. The Northern Line was likely built in a single organized phase, as evidenced by 72 structures that were discovered alongside the wall, situated in small clusters roughly 19 miles apart from one another. Furthermore, the recent study indicates that the Northern Line predates Genghis Khan's rule and was therefore not built as a defense against him. New Nazca Lines. The Nazca Lines are a series of massive geoglyphs etched into Peru's southern desert that were first spotted about a century ago. Since then, they've perplexed archaeologists who have strived to make sense of the large carvings of birds, monkeys, humanoid figurines, and geometric shapes, which occupy a roughly 77 square mile area and date back between 200 BC and 500 AD. In late 2019, an international group of researchers announced the discovery of 143 previously unrecorded etchings. A statement from archaeologists at Yamagata University in Japan revealed that the team of experts had been studying the Nazca Line since 2004, and that they initially conducted their research by analyzing satellite imagery, followed by on-site fieldwork. The newly identified Nazca Lines, which encompass 40 biomorphic glyphs of animals, plants, and people, include the first Nazca Line ever detected by artificial intelligence. To do this, the researchers teamed up with IBM to train an AI system called Watson to find carvings that humans had failed to detect. Even Watson struggled to find the new glyph, researcher Akihisa Sakurai told Smithsonian Magazine. Because the etchings are so unique, it's difficult to teach Watson what to look for. The robot detected around 500 potential glyphs, and the team chose one to travel to and investigate in person. In this case, Watson's suspicions proved correct, resulting in the identification of a 13-foot-tall, 6.5-foot-wide humanoid figure. The cartoon-like image depicts a hat-wearing biped with a television-shaped head and a club or a stick in its right hand. Research to find more Nazca Lines is ongoing, with plans for the university and IBM to further collaborate, continuing their search using a decade's worth of drone and satellite imagery and geographical survey data. They are racing against the clock to identify more glyphs so that the ancient etchings can be preserved and protected before they are ruined beyond saving. The Nazca Lines were declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994 and are facing what researchers call a crisis of destruction. It's more important than ever before to make the etchings recognizable so that people can literally see the importance of protecting them. Destroyed heritage. Some of the most important discoveries that archaeologists make through satellite imagery entail not only historical artifacts, but also modern events that affect these sites. This was the case in 2015, when news headlines drew attention to the usefulness of this technology when it comes to detecting the looting and smuggling of archaeological sites in parts of the Middle East. Take, for example, Dura Europos, a 1st-century Roman town in southeastern Syria. Satellite images of the walled city, which dates back to 330 BC, show evidence of looted burial sites as well as damage to the main gate that occurred at the hands of Islamic State militants. In one shocking incident, IS soldiers took sledgehammers to ancient Assyrian statues in northern Iraq. Dura Europos is one of at least 400 archaeological sites in Syria that were vandalized and looted during the Syrian civil war. The stolen artifacts, which likely number in the millions, were sold illegally in secret transactions along border towns between Syria and southern Turkey. It's a tragic disturbance of history and local culture, said sociologist Virginia Greenland from the University of Virginia. IS didn't invent archaeological looting, but the group intensified looting and cultural destruction at an unprecedented order of magnitude. Other experts, including members of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, noticed the looting and began monitoring satellite images for further activity. Several years later, the Syrian civil war is ongoing, and so is the tragic destruction that comes along with it. Thanks for watching! Would you like to learn more about archaeological discoveries made by satellites and drones? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. See you next time! Bye!